Now, last week there was some news that came out that there were layoffs in neurosciences, medicines, R&D. Is that an area where GSK is putting less emphasis, or are you pulling out, or what is happening there? How does that fit in with this overall discussion about where you need to put your emphasis?
So, in early 2010, we announced that we were de-emphasizing, disinvesting in a number of areas within neurosciences. Mm-hmm. And those areas were broadly characterized as areas where there is soft endpoints.
What is a soft endpoint?
Patient perception endpoint measured on a score of how does somebody feel. So things like anxiety, for example. Not that anxiety is not a very real condition, but it's very difficult to get clinical data around real impact on anxiety. And then when you also because those effects are only seen in patients and often in very large numbers of patients, and often the drugs that were being developed had very significant impact on an individual basis. People who take drugs for depression often report very dramatic effects on their personal feelings and well-being. But when you look at it on a population basis, you see relatively marginal improvements versus placebo, and often you need to do multiple expensive trials, and you don't know whether you've got something until very late in the game. So secondly, these are areas where there are a range of effective medicines. I'm not saying that the conditions are cured or even solved, but there are a range of effective medicines, and therefore the focus from the regulators is very much more on the safety of new medicines as well. So you add up soft end points, no real indication that the science is progressing dramatically, that you're going to have a lot of innovation there, and an increasingly difficult regulatory environment based on past successes. Both Glaxo and SmithKline had successful depression drugs, for example. You put those things together and you say this does not seem to be an area that's really ripe for further discovery at this point in time. It may change. New science may come along that means that in 5 to 10 years we may want to reinvest in that area, but at the moment that's not the case. So we took that decision, and we pulled out of a number of areas of neuroscience. I think it's very important that we're not pulling out of neurodegeneration and neuroinflammation, but we have pulled out of areas like anxiety and depression and just to a large extent pain as well. And then what's happened is we made those decisions in early 2010 and communicated those, and we had quite a lot of significant layoffs in our European facilities in Verona and in Harlow, and what you saw announced last week was the consequence of that on the sort of late stage neuroscience organisation, which is predominantly based in North Carolina, or a significant part of it is based in North Carolina anyway. So it's the knock-on of not saying, well, because we're not going to be doing as much discovery, we're not going to have the flow of medicines through to the pipeline. Now, we still have several neurosciences assets that we will continue to develop, so there are still a lot of people that are employed during neurosciences development work in the late stage portfolio. And obviously we're still investing in Alzheimer's, and we're still investing in Parkinson's and neuroinflammation, and so there will still be neurosciences assets coming through, but they won't be in some of the traditional areas that GSK has been in.
Will you be looking to find partners who are developing those compounds in those areas?
In which areas? In
neuroscience, the neurosciences areas that you have disinvested, exited. Were you looking for partners to instead be developing compounds in those areas?
So yes, we are. Although I think we've looked at so what we've done is we've done two things to that point. One is we looked at the pipeline that we had of compounds, and we have partnered a number of those, including creation of a number of spin-out companies, and most of those are based in Europe because that's where most of the neuroscience discovery was. As I said, the late-stage pipeline we will develop ourselves, and a number of those assets are actually partnered. They were licensed from third parties. Our view is that if there are late stage assets available for licensing, we will look at those because we still have significant commercial capabilities to promote those assets, and we could be a good partner for biotech companies. However, I think our decision tells you how we think the risk profile of those assets is, and so I don't think the message we'd want to send is we're not investing in depression, but we recommend that everybody else does, so that we can have assets at the end of it. That would be slightly inconsistent. Our view is we're not investing there because we don't see fantastic returns there. If other people see the world differently, then we are able to commercialize and globally commercialize those products, but we're not going to be doing basic research and discovery work in those areas.
Okay. So is this just part of an overall rebalancing of your pipeline?
Yes, and in fact that's what we called the process, the pipeline rebalancing exercise, and it started. Maybe I should talk about how it started, because I think how it started was quite unusual for a pharma company. We spent 2007 and 2008 doing a basic review of science around the world. So where are the hotspots of biomedical research that tell you that they're just ripe for investment from a translational perspective? And in doing that, we looked at examples of where this has happened before. So you can argue that the wave of drugs that are now in the pipeline targeting cancer, the kinase inhibitors, etc., are based on understanding of cell pathway signaling that predated those drugs by about a decade. So you can look and you can see this massive spike of academic research, and then 10 years later you've got a nice pipeline of drugs. And actually that's a pattern that repeats itself. So our view was that we should be looking for these precursors and seeking to invest where we see those precursors, and conversely where we see flat discovery and not many new targets, etc., we should not be investing there.
Okay. Are you looking to come out of this conference with anything in particular? Are you looking to find partnerships or alliances here?
I think we're always in the process. So there are a number of companies here that we are already talking to. I'm sure we'll form new relationships both with the VCs and with the companies themselves, and new partnerships will come out of it. The other advantage we have in this area is there's a very large network of alumni of Glaxo Wellcome, many of whom are currently employed in the life sciences business, and so we've got a good network here. So I think of it as I don't have specific companies that I am targeting that I'll talk about, but we have ongoing discussions with a number of companies, and I expect we'll have initiation of more from this conference.